So a quick update on the Unity debacle. The information that Unity is about to drop has already come out. A journalist at the Bloomberg wrote an article divulging information about the upcoming yet to be announced pricing model retractions and changes. So let's have a look at what was said. Unity overhauls controversial price hike after game developers revolt. Now, this is the Bloomberg. This is a reputable publication. So I guess we can take most of this as pretty accurate at this point until we hear otherwise. Video game maker tool Unity Software said on Monday it's backtracking on major aspects of controversial new price hike, telling staff in an all-hands meeting that it's now considering changes including a cap on potential fees. Under the tentative new plan, Unity will limit fees to 4% of the game's revenue for customers making over 1 million, and said that installations counted towards reaching the threshold won't be retroactive. So that's interesting. Unity is supposedly going to roll out a 4% revenue cut. Unreal Engine, of course, has a 5% revenue cut. So Unity is trying to either concede that it's not as good as Unreal and has to go a bit lower, or they're trying to show a bit of goodwill by trying to one-up their competition. But very interesting. Mark Whitten, a Unity executive, said the company hasn't yet announced the latest changes because executives are still running them by partners and don't want a repeat of last week's communication debacle. One of the most controversial elements of the policy concerned how Unity would track installations of its software. Although the company first said it would use proprietary tools, Whitten said Monday management will rely on users to self-report the data. Now that's a big shift from what was initially suggested with his proprietary black box determinations. So self-reporting would be a bit like you fill out a form, how much did your game make? And they will take a cut based on that. So of course then it requires game developers to show honesty and report accurately. So very, very different. That's a massive shift. In the meeting, Riccatello emphasized the new policy is designed to generate more revenue from the company's biggest customers and that more than 90% of Unity users won't be affected. Well, that's kind of already been debunked. Several employees asked during the meeting how Unity would bounce back from what appeared to be a breach of trust. Executives said the company will have to show, not tell, and handle future communications more carefully. Oh, really? So here we have a quote from John Riccatello himself, Tony Tortellini as some are calling him. I don't think there's any version of this that would have gone down a whole lot differently than what happened, Riccatello said. It's a massively transformational change to our business model, but he acknowledged, I think we could have done things a whole lot better. Really? Really, John? Is that a fact? And let me just go back to this line here. I don't think there's any version of this that would have gone down a whole lot differently than what happened. That is just not true. He's basically trying to dodge responsibility here and make it out like us developers are just savages and no matter what they would have proposed, we would have just lost our mind. That is just not the case. This has all been about Unity needing money. And had they just come out transparently and said, look, we're in a difficult situation. The business model that we're running is just not sustainable. What do you guys recommend? How can we work together to make us all win at this and we can have a platform long into the future? We would have stepped up and we would have come up with a plan with you. You blindsided us, you sucker punched us, you cock punched us, you did us dirty. And that is not cool. It's not about the fact that you asked for money. It's how you went about it. Think of the analogy of having a car. As a car owner, you're more than happy to pay for servicing, to pay for new tires, to pay for engine repairs. But if you take your car to a mechanic and they demand that you buy 8 new tires for a 4-wheel car, then that's a problem. And that's exactly what has happened here. Meanwhile, developers are throwing money at Godot for their goodwill. This could have been you. We are more than happy to give money to platforms that we are using. Publicly, they couldn't just say, hey, look, everyone, we've got no money. We're about to tip over if we don't solve this. Because you can imagine a lot of shareholders would have just basically sold and thought, well, if that's the case, I'm out of here. And that's always going to be the fear with public companies. And what I also see no mention of is the removal of the Plus tier membership in Unity. Bring back the Plus or indies that are still on the proverbial fence here will finish their jump over to other engines. Because as I mentioned in my last video, the Unity branding carries some baggage, now more than ever. And it would be preferential for developers to be able to hide their splash screen. Now, you could do that on the Plus tier pretty cheaply and easily, but now, if you want to do that, you have to pay $2,000 a year. Now, that's a big price to pay just to remove a splash screen. And it's worth noting, other engines don't force you to show their splash screen. You can turn it off in Unreal, you can turn it off in Godot. You know, an engine logo should be a badge of honor, and that's not where we find ourselves with Unity. And that's because they've forced every game on the free tier to show their logo. So what you have is just a bottomless pit of shovelware which are showing their logo, but all the good games worth playing are turning it off. So how does that work long term? I understand from an engine perspective they want to promote the engine, but if only the asset flips are the ones promoting it, with exception to maybe games that have, formal financial arrangements with Unity to show the splash screen, it's not going to scale long term. So really, maybe the way it should have been is that if you want to show the engine logo, your game has to meet a minimum standard. So let's quickly touch on some of these theories that maybe this was all orchestrated by Unity management as a way to manipulate the stock and position the company for perhaps a buyout, that Unity is playing some kind of four-dimensional chess here. And truth be told, I'm just not sure there's any real evidence to support that. It might be true. I think it's more easily explained by just out-of-touch management and incompetence. And while it is true that Riccitiello sold 2,000 shares prior to this announcement and 50,000 over the past year, those reports neglect to mention that he also owns 3 million. But as the CEO, he should have known better than to move any shares prior to an announcement like this. Typically, when a company that is public makes a major business announcement, they tell all their staff to hold from making any share sales or purchases. And the fact that Johnny Riccitiello has been selling all his shares and pretty much buying none, it's not a very good look, but at the same time, there is a difference between not a good look and illegal. On another note, over the past few days, like many developers, I've been doing a bit of a porting plan for my game, just to crunch the numbers and to work out how viable would it be to port my Unity game to an engine like Godot. And there's massive pros and cons, and I think once I get to a more clear conclusion about this, I'll make a report on my findings. I've got a lot of features that are specific to the Unity system. Things like particles, which have been, carefully, intricately constructed in the Shuriken particle system. But there are also long-term considerations, like after I launch my game, do I want to be working on, let's say, DLC or, even a sequel or something like that in Unity 2020 LTS? Do I want to be building it on the Unity platform? There's something to be said about that. But for the time being, the front load of work would be exceptional. But a lot of great resources and tools have started emerging to help with that decision and process of porting, including the makings of a tool to automate that porting process from Unity using ChatGPT and language models to convert the scripts. And this one tool has been promoted and released by none other than AppLovin. AppLovin being the company that Unity allegedly tried to sink through this new financial model. Payback is a bitch. And these tools are only going to get more refined over the year to come. And countless videos have started popping up specifically to help Unity developers transition to other engines. My friend Oliver Joyce is making a few of these videos. Now, Oliver is a legitimate full-time indie developer, and he has shipped games in both Unity and Godot. So he understands the differences, and he started making various videos talking about the quirks and interesting features. So I'll put a link to his channel down below if you want to check out some of those videos. So here we are, patiently waiting for Unity to play their final hand. The ball's with you, Unity. Let's see what you do.